Hey, welcome to Extra Hours. It's great to have you with us. If you've never seen what we're about before, you can go to officehours.global and that will give you some impression of this group of people from around the world that are interested in media production and technology and all those sorts of things. And we meet every single day and we chat about these things and take your questions. So if you have particular questions about production, media production, technology, AI. There's a whole bunch of things that we have all these interested folks that are talking about these things. And so on a Monday night that we are right now, we tend to just take a little bit of extra time to chew over the questions a little bit. So it's good to get your questions in quickly and to vote on them through the Meccana system so that we get to the most interesting questions or most that have wide appeal for the most amount of people if you vote them up. So we have assembled 5 other people. There's 6 of us in total, and most of which have been on previous Extra Hours. We'll start off first with Alex Lindsay. He is back. He
Hello,
has a
hello.
face. He has a face this week.
I've made it.
We can see you, and we could only
Yes,
hear
I
you last
the
time.
connection at my house is much better than the hotel I was in last week. Not that they asked me for a review, of course hotels.com sends you a review and I said, yeah, I said some of these things were good, some of these things are bad. I said, but the internet is probably a deal breaker for us. Like it was so slow. So, yeah, not there again.
It's good to give that feedback. Sometimes I used to think having to pay for Wi-Fi at hotels was a bad thing, and now actually I
I want
appreciate
to
it.
see it be $30 a night. Like I'm a
That's
big
right.
fan of
I'm
$30
happy
a
with that.
night. Like if it
Mm.
was $50 a night, I'd be like, sure. Yeah, you just tell me how, just keep everybody else off that
Yeah,
network.
exactly. If that
So
means
yeah,
no one else
I'm
is
all
using it,
in.
then I'm
Yeah,
happy. Yeah,
exactly.
nice. And John Wallace is back with us as well. Hello, John.
Hello, how are you doing?
Doing well. We missed out on hearing some of your guitar work just before. You were just having a little tinker there.
Yeah, just getting ready, get my mind in the show, read the questions, and just play a little guitar.
I
Helps to
love it.
just kind of distract you from the nervousness before a show starts.
Nothing to be nervous about. It's going to be good. Across the ditch from where I am in Australia is in New Zealand is Adrian Watkins. Hello, sir.
Kia ora, Grant, and everyone. Good evening up in the other part of the world. How you all doing?
Yes, good. It's nice to have you with us again. It's good to
Yes, sir.
keep our the different accents coming through on this show. And a first time, long time listener, for first time on the panel is Rabbi David Paskin.
Uh,
Hello,
We
sir.
could drop the rabbi part. I think it's okay. Unless anyone here
Well,
needs a blessing, I think we could drop the rabbi part.
well, you could give us a little benediction at the end, but do you
Yeah.
know? Uh, I want to get just a little bit of background because um, so from a tech point of view, you've obviously had quite a lot of experience, and so tell us a little bit about that. What has your career sort of been and tech experience?
I really don't have a tremendous amount of tech experience. I like to press buttons and see what happens. And when things aren't working, I like to try and figure out why. I think what brings me to this is that I think of myself as a futurist. I'm really not very interested in what's happening right now. I'm interested in what could be happening, and not in waiting around to see what's going to happen, but in being a part of creating what's going to happen. And so, I think naturally I fall into this crew of folks that love finding new ways to connect and new tools to help build community and new ways to present information and to consume information. So I've been a part of the office hours community for years now, and I talk about it constantly. And I am the biggest fan of After Hours, so I'm so honored to be here.
Would you know one of the rules that we had right from the start with office hours was that it would be a clean show. You know, we keep our language very family friendly, which is great for me. I've got 3 young kids. Whenever I've got office hours playing, after hours, anything, people come, like kids come in the room, I know it's going to be a healthy conversation. The other thing is that we don't talk about religion, which actually tends to mean that we don't compare Android and iPhone is often the religious talk, or perhaps Mac versus PC is where the strongest religions come in. But in this particular instance, you're the Torah tech guy, and obviously it's kind of tied in with what you do. I'm just interested, and this is a long, obviously it could be a long discussion, and I just said to you before I want to do a longer interview with you. But one of the things is that from a Jewish point of view, using technology, obviously there's some challenges there or controversy there, and COVID really forced the hand a little bit of that. Is that fair to say?
Oh, sure, it did. I'm actually teaching a class of rabbinical students, people who are studying to be rabbis. I'm teaching a class on digital innovation in Jewish tradition, and we were just talking about this today in class, how we were forced into this position. And I don't know if this community even knows this, but there is one of the challenges that we faced is that on the Jewish Sabbath and on certain holidays, we're not supposed to use technology. We're not supposed to use electronics. And yet here the entire world was leading services and all this stuff over Zoom. And so in the summer of 2020, a group of rabbis, I was a part of them, approached Zoom. I did not know anyone at Zoom yet. We approached Zoom and we said, listen, we have a problem. We need to have services on Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, because we had a 3-day holiday, but we don't want to have to press any buttons. And right now, Zoom meetings are capped at, 36 hours, I think?
Yeah.
And we said, we need a 72-hour meeting, please, so that we can start the meeting before the holiday and it'll just continue persistently and people can come and go and we don't have to press any buttons. And Zoom accommodated us. They created for the Jewish holidays a 72-hour meeting that a number of different synagogues could host on their own. So there were a lot of challenges, but like every challenge in life, I think that if you see this as an opportunity, if you see everything as an opportunity, we have grown through this. We have all grown through this, and discovered new ways to make connections.
100%. Yeah, I mean that's the story of office hours, right? Like it really
Absolutely.
it really has connected a whole bunch of us, and then we continue to do it, every day, and it's amazing.
And one of the things that I just wanted to say about the, no talking about religion, it didn't mean that we couldn't talk about our services, because we're not talking about the religion, we're talking about the technical part of it. And the intention of doing that was actually that people from different religious backgrounds could talk about whatever they needed to handle. And we've had discussions I love where David's in the call, David Brady's in the call, Tony Mobley's in the call, and we have this, people from all different religious backgrounds, all trading notes, with each other about their services, and I think that to me is a huge success of that idea. Was not so much that we didn't care about religion, but that we wanted to make it safe for people with religious backgrounds to be part of the community and deal with the things that they needed to deal with, without getting caught up in the part that separates us, a lot of times is the actual religion part.
Yep, 100%. And in fact, if we weren't embracing of that concept, then we would lose over half of our audience, because and me included, I wouldn't have the technical knowledge I have if it wasn't for starting out in the church.
I started in the church that I grew up in. I learned audio. We didn't really have video cameras back then. I mean, for church services, but I had I think a TOR,
Just film
TOR,
cameras?
like What? Just film
Just film
cameras?
cameras?
No,
The
we
one.
mostly had just people sketching, on stone. Like it was like it was like they were really just taking one stone and scratching against another one, and that's how they and
Was
then they threw
Moses
it as
there?
fast as
Is
they
that what?
could. Exactly. They were chiseling as fast as they could. Yeah, we were doing audio. The audio is what I learned first, which I always think if someone says what should you learn first, I'm like audio, because audio is so complex, and I was very fortunate to be able to learn it from someone who really knew a lot about audio design. So, I mean, like when I was 12, he gave my uncle gave me the Yamaha sound reinforcement,
Yeah,
Bible or
nice.
whatever.
Mhm.
So when I was 12 years old, sitting there going through it, not understanding half of it, but I kept it for years, and more of it made sense over time.
The good thing about that was when you were sitting in church, people would say, "Are you reading the Bible, Alex?" You're like, "Yes, I am reading the Bible."
The funny thing is that I don't like sitting in any congregation or any kind of thing. And
Right.
so I'm just not comfortable in that environment. So I'm always in the back. So like from the time I was 12 years,
Right.
I realized from the time I was 12 years old, if you put me in one of those things, I just want to find how, in any seminar, I became like, I loved going to some seminars. And what I did is very quickly ended up on the production crew. And then I became the production supervisor and everything else. And then, and a course supervisor and so on and so forth. But because that let me experience the event and experience, and when I was, doing it when I was a kid as a church, I could experience the content, but I didn't have to sit. And most importantly, I didn't have to sing. I did not. I don't mind singing, but I did not like singing. When I grew up, there was a whole bunch of singing and things that happened for the first 20 minutes, and I would always show up at like 11:21 because I was just
Right.
there for the sermon. Like I was just like, I'm here for the sermon, and then I'd have to sit through some more singing.
That not wanting to really show up piece is a real, it has been for decades, a real challenge for places of worship, because there are a lot of folks for whom just crossing that threshold is a really difficult thing to do. And again, irony of ironies with COVID is that creating spaces like this for houses of worship, it lowered the bar, and people felt a little more comfortable coming in sometimes and maybe even participating. It was really interesting phenomenon.
And I think that what's really interesting. Like I'm working on an event in a couple of weeks at a different religious institution, a meditation center, and we expect to probably have 150 people in the room and 350 on Zoom, and it's interesting because one of the things that I'm really pushing for in a lot of those things is to push the online audience forward. Like it's not just about more cameras, a more immersive experience, that type of thing, to really kind of pull that process in a little tighter. But I think that no, I think you're right. There are a lot of people who will go to an online event that won't go in person. And I think that every time you do an event, you're trying to think through what makes sense, and I think that churches have been doing this. Doesn't matter what the denomination is. Different ones do different things as far as that inclusion process, what that looks like. My wife grew up Southern Baptist, and they have praise and worship for a solid hour before there's just to get into the mood of what they're for the sermon. And so, but I take that I look at that as a lesson and Tony Robbins does something similar, which is that he does a lot of things to get people physically moving. And I think that that's interesting. I don't like it. like as a person, I do not want to stand up and sit down, stand up, sit down. I'm like, I'm like but we have to always, I think, get outside when we're designing events. I have to get outside of how I like to see events, because I've realized that I'm not normal. Like I'm just not normal in the way that like I'm not an average person watching an event. Like I just want the protein. I don't want anything else around it. Like I don't want, like all the other stuff. I'm just waiting for you to, stop with all the other stuff and get to the point. And
there's definitely an experience and Tony Robbins talks about it, that there is, it's not just hyping it all up for the sake of hype, but believes that our memory is much stronger when it's a when it's a physical experience.
Mm-hmm.
We're engaged with it more, and that can still be that can still be virtual. It can still be you're by yourself in your house. But encouraging people to physically move makes a big difference. Now, I mean, we're dancing around the religion side of it tonight, and I think what's interesting with that is kneeling, standing, singing, certain positions that different religions hold actually has extra meaning to it. And so there's something to that about physically moving. And I do think that when you're slouched in your seat, maybe it's on your TV and you're just listening to someone talk for hours and hours, if it's some sort of education thing, is very different to how you are if you're leaning in, you're getting up, you're moving around, and it's a very different engagement level. But I agree with you, Alex. I don't want to do it, David.
This is one of the inherent problems with virtual events, is that when we're sitting down looking at a screen, our muscle memory says you're watching TV, and that's a passive experience.
Right.
And so there's an element of having to train ourselves and our participants that this does not have to be that passive experience.
Well, and this is why I always think that it's so useful to look at not lecturing and really get to the Q&A as fast as possible. Give people the video ahead of time, or more importantly, give them audio. I love listening to audio. And so I'll walk around, I'm working on my pool. I'm working, like something I hate doing, but I have to do is clean the filter for my pool, which takes 2 or 3 hours. And when I'm doing that, I'll sit there, I'm listening to all kinds of books and things, and it all just kind of disappears while I'm working on it. But the thing is then I have all these questions, and I always feel like that's when, like, if that author said, I'm going to do a Q&A on Wednesday, and you can read the book up until now, and then you can put the questions in as you go or whatever. And then it's just Q&A. Because what we find, obviously, with office hours is that Q&A is the most effective way to keep people connected, to the conversation.
Yeah, totally agree. And the interesting thing about I do the same thing, listening to audiobooks or podcasts while I walk and go for a long walk, and I associate different topics or things that have been spoken about with where I was walking at the time. And so I can think back over, when I was at that corner, we were talking, we were thinking about this thing. It's really interesting about the connecting that physically. But speaking about how much we value questions, and we're 18 minutes into this episode, we haven't taken one, but we will. David, we'll go to yours first, but Guy, you can just read that out because it relates to what we're talking about.
Sure. David Paskin's question says, our community stopped streaming to a public YouTube stream a year ago because of a number of bomb threats. We are looking to keep our streams unlisted, but make them easier to access for our partners. How might you accomplish this?
Alex?
You can, now the question is whether it matters whether it's public or other things, but one of the things you can do is embed it, of course. That's what we do here. So people are watching our show right now, embedded inside of Makana. But it could be embedded into your web page. It could be, and that web page could be behind a password if you want. So it could be something that was very simple, but it's something that your members could be part of. Obviously, if they had the link and they shared it, it would still go out to everyone. But it's a great place, and you can kind of build the look and feel that you want around that video.
John?
Depending on how adventurous you are, I did a Owncast server and actually had 700 people watching. I did with AWS serving all the video files, just doing an HLS stream. It was actually really easy. It just depends if you want to spend the money to host it yourself versus streaming it to YouTube for free. But it's really
David,
cool.
how many?
You can build a lookout. I had 700 people watching, just streaming from bulk storage from Amazon, not even using a CDN.
And that's 700 is a pretty low draw. And so you don't even need an edge at that point, because in fact,
I didn't have to.
When you have too few people, the edge won't work because it's got it's being kept on the edge servers. So if you have a CDN, I know when we do tests, we have to be very careful with Akamai, because if there's not enough people watching, the packets get dropped before the next person picks them up. So because there's not enough, on that server. So you have to, so sometimes you can have less efficient systems. A CDN is really designed for a lot of people watching. Now, there are, time of life is kind of a thing that YouTube obviously manages, but that's a challenge when you have low viewership. But if you have, I mean, and John, I bet you that's not that wasn't very expensive. It's probably
I did it with my free tier. I didn't even break it.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Because it's charged that month for that. It was just something I wanted to test with, and it's pretty cool.
Because you're going to pay probably like 4 cents. My guess is 4 or 5 cents. I mean, at bulk, it's probably 2 cents a gig. Maybe 4 cents a gig. That whole show is probably a gig. So you're probably talking about, 2 to 5 cents, or maybe 2 to 8 cents to be conservative, per viewer watching the show. So, and David, do you know how many people are watching it?
Maybe 100. Maybe 150.
So, I mean, so you're talking about something that costs a couple dollars, to set up if you wanted to do it with AWS. Although if YouTube's working, it's super stable and very easy to use. And we were talking about it before the show. I don't find AWS to be easy to use. Like, it's like, it just, I always joke that, the problem with school sometimes is that the problem with school is that it's run by people who are good at it. And the problem with AWS is it's run by people that makes sense. And if you're, it's very painful for everybody else.
We also so we do like an at the movies type of thing. And so during COVID, obviously we couldn't push this to YouTube because it actually has film clips from movies. And they don't care if you have a license or not. They're going to pull it down, mute it, whatever. And so we had a guy who worked for TED Talks, who went to the church. And so he's the first one who kind of built it out. And I was like, oh, look at this. I could do this. He just embedded it right in the website. And then I just ran Owncast because I wanted to see how much we could kind of stretch it from there.
Yeah, we just had the question Justin was asking. It was Owncast, is it? Owncast
is an open source project. It's like you can host your own version of Twitch. It has chat, has a bunch of moderation features, admin. It's pretty powerful.
That's cool. Yeah, David, from my point of view, I spent so much time in Zoom and running events in Zoom that we built out Obvio to be able to handle having people come in and sort of keeping that secure. So the first thing that made it secure was that it was obscure, in that it wasn't a Zoom link that people are just searching for, and finding that link. But then going through that dashboard and then using a Zoom registration, automated, but it's a Zoom registration, means that you can then say whether you allow multiple devices per registration or not. And so when you disable that, only allow a single device per registration, it means that even if someone did share their login somehow, you only ever get one person in. And so my thinking has shifted from live streaming to doing more in Zoom because of that, the potential of interaction. Now, the interaction can be non-verbal, right? Like what we're doing here now. There is an interaction that's happening between us as the panel, even when we're not talking. And there is an engagement level that increases, I believe, that we engage more when we see other people engaging. And so, of course, the converse is true as well, that when everyone is off looking at another screen and clearly not engaged at all, then that can be discouraging for everyone. But generally, when you get more people that are looking and watching, even if they're technically just kind of watching the same stream and that stream is not interacting directly with those people, I still find it to be more engaging.
And one of the interesting things is, I've done a lot of work at arenas. And, the person, you see these YouTube videos of some person just getting up and starting to dance, and then they just go crazy and they go up and down the thing and they're dancing like crazy, and it's goofy and it's not very good, but it's kind of good. But they're just making fun of themselves. They're professionals. we hired them to do that. Well, I didn't hire them to do that, but the funny thing is, talking to someone who was hiring them, he talked about the fact that they had to be relatable. So he said, we can't have someone that looks like a dancer, that dances like a dancer, that is like a dancer. It has to be someone who is oftentimes a little overweight. They're a little or underweight. They're kind of gangly or kind of whatever it is, but they're not, because people have to relate to them as anyone could do this. And it's important to have them be any one person that got up. And so you'll see that, but there's a lot of work that gets done there, but it makes them, it's night and day. When they say you hire someone like that for a show, for a night, and it's all the like the kissing things, and when they kiss your partner,
Kiss
or
cam.
the kiss cam or whatever, and the there's the kiss cam, and then there's the dance cam, and then there's the things going on. And in all of those, there's oftentimes people who are set up to do that. And and they said it just primes the pump, and suddenly everybody's doing it. And you show that oftentimes it's not usually the first one, but it's like one of them, and suddenly it really builds up that. So thinking about those things as we look at events is good. And it's also always good if your team isn't very good, not a very good basketball team, not a very good baseball team in the United States. They're the best at this, because why else are you going to go? Like, you're not going to go to see them win, so, and then when they start, so that, so
for
like
the fun.
No, they are experts. They trade notes between each other. That's the funny thing, is like a basketball team will come in and they'll look at what the other basketball teams are doing during the breaks and doing everything else. And that's a good one. But the only ones that focus on it are the losing teams. The winning teams don't do anything. Like, they don't do anything other than like, hey, we're winning. Who cares?
I tell you, the one that I've seen other than dance cam, kiss cam, is reverse cam, which is really funny. So they'll film people eating and things like that, and then just play it in reverse. And so you just see them like, pulling all this food out of their mouth. It's hilarious. It's hilarious. Yeah. It's easy and hilarious. May not work for church so much. Probably
Yeah,
wouldn't use
don't
it.
use it. It's not a good tip for church.
That's right. All right. Next question.
All right, next one's coming in from Zach in the Great Pacific Northwest. And Zach asks, had a show this weekend switched in the cloud, had prepped a week ahead and tested multiple times, and had to revert to backup plans 1 and then backup 2 locally. To which point do you test, verify, and validate in the era of cloud production?
Guy.
Yeah, this is one where it depends on how big the show is. And this is where you might want to call in for backup, so to speak, because there are tried and true methods of cloud production. So it depends on where your sources are coming in from. Is it an SRT feed? Is it do you have an elemental? Do you have NDI bridge? So some of these things we've seen, like in Tony Mobley's show, and this is one of the great things of doing a show where there's less risk because it's a nonprofit or something like that. And this is why I love doing shows like this one, because you can fail and it's not going to be the end of your career. You're not going to lose that client. So we've managed to work with a couple other people that work for Fortune 1000 entities that we kind of borrowed their infrastructure and their workflows. But it all really started from one gentleman who was doing some esports, and his workflow is freely available on the web. It's Opalcast, and is the name of the YouTube channel. And he shows how to bridge these NDI instances. So this is where people fall down, is they try to do everything on one instance, and it's not supposed to be that way. So let's say you have a G4DN 4X. That's not a super powerful machine. And so what we do is we'll take a machine that is what we'd call a contribution machine. And all that machine's doing is it's just taking in video. So it's ingesting video. And then we'll have a cutting machine, and that video is just cutting. We may have a graphics machine, and then we'll have an encoding machine. So, and all this is connected via NDI. So I'd really say, to answer the question, I mean, you want to look at an established workflow and then burn it in. I mean, depending on how big the show is, I mean, we'll let stuff run 24 hours, and then we'll even have it in a backup data center. And if you know the right methods, you can even get it to where when you press one button on a Stream Deck, it actually fires off in 2 data centers. And this is where some consultants, and how, depending on how big the production is, you might want to hire some of the best in the business, like Jonas and Tucker with Basecamp Global. We've used them in the past when I got over my head on some stuff. I mean, Brent and I worked on a cloud production. I said, this is getting to the level where we need 2 data centers. Let's call in the big guns. And they fired it up in a different data center and got stuff working
That was after you saved my butt when this studio went down. we
Yeah.
we did manage that guy. So you got it working then, and then we both went, all right, let's go more redundant in the cloud. Yeah.
Yeah, this is
Exactly.
where having the expertise of somebody who could do like multi views that are customized for the client with different logos and things like that that I would have never thought of, but because they do it for other clients, and this is where, pulling on that thousands of shows expertise, because we've got people in the community that have just gotten into a rhythm where, whether it be a government political client, that it's just a rhythm now. Every day they're doing a show, and so some of this stuff, same with the nonprofits. I mean, there's just a ton of these guys doing the same thing over and over again. So when you're trying to do a show that's, I think Zach does some kind of Baja racing type thing, and those are just like, once a quarter or something like that. Yeah, you're not doing them every day, so you just don't get into that rhythm. And so this is more than ever where you need somebody to help you, make sure whether it's going to be Starlink, or is it going to be SRT, or is it going to be an Elemental, and how do you get just that to SIP bandwidth sometimes out there? Is it an H.265 encoder that's the answer? And is it 720p that's the answer? Because even Jonas had trouble getting out of the IBC, what do you call that? The RAI. They went around a corner, him and John Barker were live, and they walked around a corner, and it was just SRT puke. I mean, it was just that color, all the colors of the rainbow. It just fell apart, and they're like, whoa, feedback from all of us was like, hey, you've lost, you've lost your bandwidth. And so that's the little things like, we even at NAB figured out, hey, we need a hardwired connection. Let's get a booth. That's why this past year we tried so hard to, make it rock solid. And part of it stems from, hey, what have we learned from other people falling down in the past? And a lot of it can be, bandwidth. And so, yeah, it's just testing that stuff over and over and over again, and having, A, B, C, D, or what's your, Alex, your saying for
Pace.
starts with a P? Yeah.
Pace. I didn't make it up. It's not mine. It's Navy SEALs. So it's, primary, alternate, contingency, emergency.
Planning for rainy days.
Yeah, exactly.
Alex,
Yeah.
you got more?
So what I try to do is find events that I can work on that are of low consequence. So, to me, risk is the chance of something going wrong to the power of the consequences. So if you have if it's a relatively high risk, especially anytime you do something for the first time, you should consider it high risk. So you should consider that there's a 10, if you've never done it before, there's anywhere from a 10 to 50% chance it's not going to work. And then what is the risk? I mean, what is the consequences? But that's what risk is. It's chance of going wrong to the power of consequences. And so if the consequences are very high, now you're in a pickle, in that area. And so what you want to think about, but what I do is try to reduce the consequences. And by reducing the consequences, I'm almost always using my system for free first. So you saw like we did a spatial stream of the Verve pipe from Sweetwater. I wasn't getting paid for that. So we weren't getting paid for it. It was, we were, the band was okay. I was very clear with the band. I was very clear with everyone. I don't know how it was going to turn out. But I did get some great people, Michael Coleman and came in so we had a lot of, we brought in, some folks to help with that. And so I think that was, we had a good team, so between Michael Coleman, who has done a lot of work, and then Max Hunt, who came in and helped just make sure that we had enough people to kind of move things around. He was great to just help that piece through. So there's three of us running things, and we were there all day. We treated it like a paid event. We went through all the stuff. We did. I came in, did previs of the space. I built a 3D model of it. I, did all the things that I normally do with a production, and we ended up with a good result. It turned out well. But if it hadn't, I had set everybody up I had set up all the expectations that we'll see how this goes, and so what I would say, how that relates to what you're doing is I really would recommend finding smaller shows that you can do in the cloud. That's what we're doing here. 090 is planning to move all into the cloud. So we're kind of slowly moving all of our virtual events. And we still do things physically. I did 2 of them last week in Dallas, but we typically are doing all of our stuff that's going to be dealing with Zoom and stuff like that. We want to move from hardware to the cloud. Pixel Core, not Pixel Core, but Office Hours wants to move from here to the cloud, over time. But we're very carefully. We have a great system that John manages for us that makes this all possible for us to experiment on Mondays while we know we have something working every single day. And that took a long, that we had something that was really worked out. And then we very carefully, like when we moved from 3210 to John's system, I turned off all the second hours. Like it was just all like it's all Q&A, no external partners for 2 months. Like maybe that was overly, but I didn't want an external partner coming to show their product and having us, tear apart in the atmosphere. It turned out it took like 3 days for like it was, and so I overestimated, but I will always be, careful of those things. So in your company, try to find things that you can do that are small internal talks and a bunch of other things that are using that system, and then that's going to help you wring it out. It's very hard to wring out problems with tests. You need, live ammo. You need to be able to test it with, like, I'm going to do a show and it has all the requirements of a show. It has a start. It has people talking. It has people joining. It has all the components that you need to kind of slowly, build that up. And that's the most stable way to do it. Like, that, and if you're not going to do it that way, do exactly what Guy said, which is hire professionals. Like, don't hire people who have done it, who have done through those tests and done live shows, and have them build it for you. So either be ready to do lots of little shows that get you up to the big show, or be ready to hire the professionals. Sometimes you might do all the little shows and have the professionals do the big show, because then what happens is you'll learn a lot, and then you do more down that path. But for big shows that matter, hire someone who's done thousands of them. And again, Jonas and Tucker are some of the best. So I think that that's what I would consider.
John?
For me, it's about being very consistent and being very comfortable. And like, we use something at work called chaos engineering. We picked it up from Netflix. It's all about creating failure points and learning how to recover from them. So have someone break something in a way that you're not expecting. How fast can you do that? Tabletop exercises are very common in security. We also run them across our organization. Just like, hey, role play this event. What would you do? It's very important to not have to panic. If you can pre-create all those different scenarios and have plays, this is what, the Army does, and the SEALs. They're trained for every situation. So when it happens, they have an instinct response. They don't have to think. I go do this because this is happening. As much as you can do that, the quicker you're going to get this, your 1,000 hours of experience without having to do it and fail in front of other people.
Well, and the other thing is to keep your elbows in. I used to wrestle. Yeah. So we used to always talk about keeping your elbows in, and you used to put your arm out like this, and someone's going to throw you, and they're going to get under you. They're going to do a bunch of things. You keep your elbows in the whole time. And so keeping your elbows in an event is not trying to do more than the budget or the resources provide. So when someone, when you have a small budget, when you have a small number of people working on it, you keep the show simple. This show, since we're getting it off the ground, is much simpler than the morning show, because we have less people working on it, and it's, and we're learning how to use the product, we're learning how to use VisVector, and we're learning how we're going to put this stuff together. So we keep the number of moving parts safely within the resource structure that we have. And I think I see that at almost every level. Where you see errors is people stretching. I often talk about keeping everything to 40 to 60% of your capacity, your computers, your hardware, like keep everything at 40 to 60% capacity, so that you always have room to stretch. When you're at 100%, I see shows where people are running at 90, 100, 120, 150% of their capacity. They're just, they're waiting for something to go wrong. And even if it doesn't go wrong, it's not going to be great. And so a lot of times the big thing is remembering to do, like, when we think of new ideas when we're on set, that's for the next show. Like, people will say, hey, I got this idea, and I'm like, next show. Like, write it down. Like, I'm not saying it's not important, but don't talk to the client about it, and don't talk to other people about it. Just keep it to yourself. That's the next show. I don't add on the day of the event. I don't add new things. Like, we are going to execute against exactly what we had planned to do, and knowing that the next one will be better.
Yeah, I think understanding what the consequences are is really key, and so for some shows, an allowance of problems happening, often the smaller and cheaper the show is, the more that allowance is for things going wrong. And so, how much is the recovery time? And the recovery time, the amount of recovery time, the longer it is, the cheaper it is. The shorter that recovery time is, the more expensive it is, right? And you need more backup systems and things in place to be able to recover really quickly. And so I think about what is the technical recovery requirements, but then what are the programmatic recovery requirements? Like what happens to the content when something goes wrong? What's the plan in place for what the host says? Or, if we've lost all communication with our audience, what's our plan in that way? For us, if Zoom dies, touch wood, it never actually has for us. I think we have one time where it was out for a little bit, but we're doing all these huge shows and don't ever have any problems with Zoom, which is really amazing. We used to run a YouTube backup for all of our events, and we've just stopped doing it, because we just haven't needed to have that on standby. But what is the communication strategy if you do lose something and you need to communicate with the audience? What is that? Having multiple ways of communicating with your audience. Are they sitting in a Facebook group as well? Are the most of the people there where you can ping everyone at the same time to say that we're pivoting or something like that? But it's much more than just tech, right? And I agree too with the not using your capacity. The capacity of the individuals is really key, because often when something goes wrong, it's the cascading issues that's the problem. And so if
Yeah.
something goes wrong, and now as a result of that, or as a consequence of that, these other four things have stopped. And then while I'm trying to fix those, I'm now not doing audio or switching vision or
Well,
right. And all of those
a-
things.
and the tricky thing is that a client will come up and ask you for something new that is unrelated to what ends up failing
Yeah.
because you were paying attention to something else. And so then you get blamed for it. You're going under the bus for that, because something went wrong. But it's hard to explain. Like when you asked for a new graphic, the audio went bad,
Yeah.
or something else happened because you're not paying attention. But that also comes down to, a lot of times trying to make sure the teams are large enough that you have the right, and this comes also down to the right people in place. The events that I did um, last week, my team was grossly overqualified. That's the way I like it. Like everybody's grossly overqualified for what they're doing. I'm doing a really simple show, relatively simple things, and I have people who I've been working with for over 10 years and sometimes 20 years. They are as good as you can get, and I have them doing this little project, and it's so gratifying to work with great teams like that. So, but if you don't have that, the key is you got to get people up to speed and get them, get the people there to know it and to cross train and so on and so forth to make that work.
I think the
Yeah, I
important
watched
part too is like teams of. I'm sorry. Go ahead,
No,
guy.
go, John.
I was gonna say the important thing to know, like Alex, you have a great team. If you can bring one or two people who aren't great yet, they get to see that and grow from that. And so
Well,
when
you
you're
want to. I
stacking your
mean,
team like that, like we do it all the time. Half of my people in IT came from the business and we trained them. But I had to hire
we
good people, get people up, and then now all of a sudden they're the rock stars and they're the ones coming up. And we're growing all of us from internal talent. People are in different operational roles or in underwriting. A girl in underwriting is now leading my observability team just
That's
because,
cool.
we have
awesome work
guys.
ethic. Yeah.
Yeah, I completely agree. And what we do is what I always want to train everybody. I don't need them to know anything. Like, well, Own I know doesn't hire as many people as that Pixelcore had. With Pixelcore, we were bringing in people from the local community college. They had very little knowledge ahead of time. They weren't had. Then I did not want generally any graduates. We did get some graduates from Academy of Art because we had a teacher that could handpick the ones that they liked, that they had been there. But overall, I'm not looking for graduates. In fact, I don't want them because they're usually full of a bunch of ideas that aren't very useful. Like they just aren't, they're taught by teachers who don't do enough of this, and so, so they, so I just need them. I just want them raw. I would take them straight out of high school. I'd take them in high school, and so my son right now is starting to do production with me, because, I just tell him I'll tell him once how to do something and he'll just do the same thing over until, and just get better at it. But to your point, we've had people who are selling shoes that are now producing big events, and because I look at every person as, what I'm looking for is, and I learned some of this watching Richard Branson. Richard Branson once hired the person that I was interacting with in his organization. He said, "How did you get this job?" Like she's managing all this stuff. She's like, "I was a waitress." Richard Branson just saw that I was really on the game and play, dancing with the thing, and he just hired me on the spot. She goes, I said, "What am I going to do?" He goes, "I don't know yet, but I know you'll be good." So I think that is, I look for people who are on time, working hard, good with others. I can do anything with that. The skill set is like 10% of what it takes to be on a team. And so that's so to your point, 100%, we love training people from scratch because they're also customized to our pipeline. And so they're, and
Guy, you got cut off.
Yeah, I was going to say, I was on this production recently where it was masterful to watch this gentleman in charge tell the client no. It was a last minute request and he just flat out said no. And I started thinking of Alex because I was just like, this is totally Alex, because the client said, "Where's the PIP?" And I said, "There is no PIP on this. No picture in a picture. This is straight cuts." And they would have hired more people. They would have brought in different gear. There would have been different people sitting next to me. But he was smart to do that because it would have been a total distraction. Because I started pulling out mix effect. I grabbed my personal laptop, and it was just chaos. 50 minutes to show, and it was like, no, we're not doing any of that. And the client, his little lip went down, but it was just like, hey, this is the first year of this. It was a big show, and I'm glad that he did that because I got to see it in action where he just put his foot down and the show went smooth. But sure, we didn't get our pips. I had to do straight cuts, but it worked. And it went out to broad. It was on the air.
Yeah. And I think that the other thing though is that oftentimes as a vendor, a lot of times what I'm trying to think of is what will the client ask for that they haven't asked for yet. So sometimes I'm trying to anticipate that. I'll say no if they catch me, like on a, if they catch one that I didn't expect, I just say no. Just exactly what you're talking about here. But a lot of times there's 6 or 8 things that I know that they're eventually going to want to do. And we will literally build those, prep them, not ever bring them up, because the problem with managing expectations is that as soon as you open one door, the client can see across to the next door, and they'll go, "Oh, well, what if we did this?" So we oftentimes have a whole package of ideas that have all been pre-built, all done, to the point where we had one where the client wanted to do something that was, I won't get into the details, but the client wanted to stream out of, wanted to stream out of an airplane in the last minute, like a couple of weeks ahead of time. And I was like, "Oh, we need a lot of time to do what we need to do." And they want to be off the coast, so we don't have the ground. And so I told them that wasn't going to work, but I was happy to test it. So I got a bunch of flights on a G4. As we proved that it didn't work, but I got lots of little sandwiches and triangles and stuff like that. But we proved that it didn't work. And then we were only 4 days out from the event, and they said, "Well, what are we going to do?" And I said, "Well, what if we did this? What if we had them there and they're by the venue, and then they do this thing, and you have the expert and the host, and then we do the whole," and I explained the whole thing to them. They said, "That'd be great, but how do we do this in 4 days? I mean, it's a long drive." And I was like, "Oh, the truck's already halfway there." So like the whole thing, we had designed plan B, put it in a truck, put it in, because I knew that they wouldn't have enough time to turn it. And here's the deal, is that their deposit was enough to pay for the risk of the truck. So what I did is I wasn't going to lose money on it because I had a 25% deposit. So I knew that the money was there to get paid to fill the truck with things and send it up and cancel all my crew if it didn't work out. But I knew that otherwise we didn't have a show, and it was the kind of thing you can only do once. Like you can't move the date. so it was, but that's how if you're really trying to think ahead, you're always trying to think way ahead of your client, because they've never done it before, and you have, and you hopefully try to figure those things out. And then, but if they catch you, and they do ask you for something, I got asked for a couple things this last weekend, and I said, "No, I can't do that." I'm not, I just didn't plan that far out because I didn't think that was possible.
Yeah, it was one of the phrases that Guy was saying, is to Just keep the knife in. Just keep the knife in. Don't pull it out.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, and that's
When
the
something's
under
wrong,
promise
sometimes.
and over deliver. You know, it's just like,
Yeah.
don't be promising things that you don't have that experience or don't have that budget to be able to pull it off. Because
Yeah.
sometimes it's even just the machinery, like not having a powerful enough machine or crew to pull it off efficiently. And like we were talking about before, when something goes wrong, do you have time to have that already rehearsed so that the crew is ready? Like we were down to frames on our failover. Grant knows, because we would test it before every show, and we got down to frames. Like you couldn't even tell, like the audience would not be able to tell that we failed. And then we're talking to a whole nother data center, like on a whole nother coast with the press of a button. And we would just call it over comps and failing over to B. And it was just like the rhythm and the tone was just like that NASA tone. It was just like, we're failing over to B.
Yeah. That, this is what I love about our conversations at office hours is often, we started again as a technical discussion, a question, and it moves into the philosophical and the teamwork and the people that you have in place. And this is what has been amazing about this community, is that through these conversations that we have, we've identified the people that we wanted to work with. And that's what happened with me and Guy. As soon as Guy's employment changed around and became more available, I was like, I've got to get a show with Guy, because I just knew the quality of the man, like I could hear it over and over. You can't keep a facade up for, months and months and years. Such a nice guy, really intelligent, thoughtful. And they were the key things that I was like, beyond all of the technical knowledge, it was those things first. It was 60% who the person is, and then it was like 40% what they know. And that's what has built great team, has been, these types of people. And we have many of them in office hours, because it's this curiosity that brings us together more so than our technical knowledge. And so that's what's happened in this conversation. To an answer to one question has moved very quickly into the philosophical and what's going on behind the tech.
And by the way, just as a little advertisement for what we do there, is that how we get to know people is volunteering and paneling. Being on the panel and volunteering on the show, that's how we get to know you. So that's how we know who's who.
So a couple of notes. One is that I failed to mention that Taylor, who's TDing today, has made the interface of Vector available in After Hours right now. So if you go into After Hours, there's no audio, but you can see the full interface, and you can see him actively switching the show live. And so if you're watching live, then please go and join that. And you'll need to just keep the YouTube link open as well to continue to listen to it and watch it. The second thing is that we've got lots of questions, which is awesome. Thank you. We won't get to all of them because we're spending 15 minutes on each question. But that's what this show is, right? And so some of your questions will get pushed back, and you can post them in the morning show. But it's also important to vote up the questions that the most amount of the audience is interested in. And so when you're in Makana, you can vote up those questions. So please do that. All right, next question.
Next one's coming in from Chris Sabato in Albany, Oregon. Albany, Oregon. COSM Dallas is an immersive dome that shows sports. It looks like being in a luxury box at the game, with one in Dallas and one in LA. Can you see more popping up? And he's got a YouTube link.
Alex?
Well, they sure do. Like I can tell you,
Right.
they're both the Sphere and Cosm are both looking at how do you what's the next event space, like what's the next experience, and they're obviously the Sphere is at a giant level, Cosm is at a massive level, so there's they're both in two different places there, but they're playing with some very high res solutions, and I think that there's a lot of really interesting possibilities with both those formats. But I do think some version of these immersive formats is going to be a big deal.
John?
Really, what I think you're seeing is people are tired of just a similar experience you can get at home. TVs are getting bigger sound systems. Either you care about it or you don't. And so you have to create a different experience. You're even seeing this in theaters, where they're now projecting on the walls and creating even more immersive content that you literally can't create at home unless you're spending a ton of money. You have to create a draw for people to leave their houses. They got too used to being at home, ordering DoorDash, all that stuff. There's got to be something to get someone out of their home where you can be as comfortable as you want, wear whatever you want, not put on makeup. Like it's all about the experience and creating something that's going to draw someone. This is where you're seeing that huge investment from companies just trying to get people back into their businesses because they know they upsell, right? F&B makes everything possible. Yeah. So like that's what you have to focus on if you're trying to grow businesses, not by having DoorDashers come because you're not selling them alcohol. The biggest thing is trying to get people into your doors.
Right. Interesting. And John, your makeup looks great tonight, by the way.
Thank you. I really worked on
it. David?
I'm not sure what I'm looking at. Are these real screens in this? Those are insane. These are huge real screens out around the actual game that's being played.
It's a fake stadium that you're sitting in, that you're having an LED wall in front of you.
It's not a real stadium.
It's not a real stadium.
Oh,
it's like being in a box, but on at the goal line or wherever you want to be.
Oh, okay. Thank you. I wasn't sure what I was looking at. That's amazing.
It's pretty cool. All right, next question.
Paul Wallace in Austin, Texas asks, comment, early Grok-2 has rocketed to third in overall ELO scores on Chatbot Arena, behind only ChatGPT 4.0 latest, Gemini 1.5 Pro, and GPT 4.0 Mini. The graphics are stunning and shocking at times. And he's got a link here to a YouTube video.
Alex?
Yeah, I wasn't sure exactly. The link took me to something that didn't look like stunning graphics. I mean, there were some graphics there, but I didn't quite understand what I was looking at there. But yeah, it's going to be, Musk is going to play really hard, and to push this forward. And we're really the benefactors of an incredible, race that's happening. And we see this, you see this every once in a while. So we saw it with the railroads. We saw it with oil. We saw it with the internet. We saw it with, social media, where suddenly there's this just crazy expenditure of, you saw it with the phone, like when the first phone, and then you saw it with smartphones, and suddenly there was this huge race. And what ends up happening is at the end, 2 or 3 win and everybody else goes broke. And that's how venture capital play. I mean, they're venture capital is hoping that 1 out of 10 of their investments does well. The rest of them are just at risk. That's the risk, right? And so they're trying to minimize that, but do the best they can. And so what you're seeing is this huge push. I think that we're not going to see that many new players because the cost of doing this is so expensive. So the cost of playing in this game, the table stakes, very high, billions to keep up with this now. So I think we're not going to see a lot of new ones really popping in, and it's mostly just because the level, you'd have to raise $1 billion to have a chance, in this game. Now it's like playing in F1. Like, okay, well, you need to have a car, so it's and this car is a lot more expensive than the cars that they're talking about there. So I think that's the challenge there. But I think that it's going to be a big fight between, again, Gemini, ChatGPT, Grok, a couple other. I mean, obviously Anthropic is doing a lot of good stuff. So we still have 5, 6, 7, 8, knowing that we're going to get down to 2 or 3. Like that's what's going to happen, and it's unclear. Apple's got its own approach, which over time could be incredibly powerful. But the question is whether they can actually pull it off. But Apple generally pulls a lot of things off, so we kind of are going to watch how that goes. But the idea that they can have an entirely or much more user-based AI system with a private-based AI system that only does basically pressure relief, just the little things that you need. Right now, it's a lot of things that you need, but that circle could get a lot bigger. But otherwise, I think we're really fortunate because, man, is it going fast. People are spending a lot of money for us, for us to play with it.
Yeah. David?
I was surprised today. I was I was introducing some folks to Midjourney, and I was really surprised at their response, some of their responses, that AI is stealing the livelihood of the artists, and there seemed to be such a misunderstanding of what these tools are doing. Do you have a sense that we've gotten any better at explaining how this stuff works to
I mean,
the
I
masses?
will say that the one thing that I will often bring up is the fact that, when we were stealing blue collar jobs with mechanization, we didn't care at all. So when you had the all these motorized things that's happened over the last century have taken thousands and tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of jobs, by mechanizing our workforce, and all these automation tools and everything else, we were fine with that. Like, it was like, well, the business just changes and this is how this happens. But now when they come after the white collar jobs, they're like, oh, grab the pearls, and so I think it's a little hypocrisy here of what we're worried about. I also think that people overestimate how quickly AI will get to where they think it's going to go. I spend a lot of time in Midjourney almost every day because it's a toy that I play with all the time. Like, I have it in relaxed and it's just constantly making images. I've got a little astronaut in Clover right now. But the thing is that getting it to do precisely what you want, which is what, I mean, we have meetings about a bolt, like in Star Wars, we'd have a meeting about how how it flittered and then fell off, in Star Wars. AI can't touch that, and it's not going to be able to touch it anytime soon. It's really, like, to be that precise takes a person to do that, because we even had to override all the physics. Like, we wouldn't follow physics for a lot of the pod races and so on and so forth because that didn't look right, right? And so simulators don't usually know what to do with that. Now, I think there are people that's going to displace. I'm not saying that it isn't, but I think that it's not as I don't think it's going to take over everything the way people think. Maybe 10 years from now, I may be wrong, but I just don't. I think that there'll be more, but you do have to be at the top of your game. I will say, like, that, you're not going to be able to be at the bottom. I've said this for 10 years. I was like, if you're bored with your job, don't worry, you won't have it much longer. So if you're doing something that's boring, repetitive, isn't, like, if it's just a rote thing that you have to do, you're in trouble. Like, get out of there quickly. You have to be somewhere that you have to be human and you have to be thinking about it. But if you're a glorified machine, that's probably not the place you want to be.
Yeah, I still feel like at the moment I use AI like I would drive a manual car or a stick shift car, where I'm still thinking about the best times to change gears. And so it's learning about the best prompts and the way to do the prompt design. And I think that's getting better and better and better to where you get the automatic cars, and now I just say one prompt and there it all is. And but it still is in those early days. But the sorts of responses I get for doing web development and stuff is just mind blowing. Like, I just run everything through it now, and most of the time don't need to check every line. I can test it, and oh yeah, it works. It's amazing. Adrian.
Yeah, along those lines. Over the last few months, I've written some programs for people and used GPT as an assistant, because you've still got to look at it and see. But with the new models, I ran it through, and it's kind of scary how intelligent it is, working out things that probably weren't perfectly optimized in the first few iterations and what's coming out now. But Paul's comment's interesting because, is Grok jumped up the charts because it's got minimal or no guardrails, so people are creating images that Midjourney wouldn't let you do.
Yeah, John.
I was gonna say, we actually have GitHub Copilot, and so you can train it with your code base, and then, like, automatically resolve vulnerabilities. So we can throw it through, like, Sneak or other tools, and code coverage. It's very powerful. It's definitely helping to augment our more senior devs. But what we found is, like, the junior devs don't have the patterns yet, and so they don't know exactly how to check it against it. And so we want to hold that back until we find that they have enough training to be able to leverage it to help them go faster, and not just lean on it for, like, we could have poorly written code in our code base that we're training it on, and it doesn't know whether to use that or not, or it's poorly performing or has some sort of impact on our databases. So that knowledge alongside a senior developer, they're just flying through stuff now.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense because there's been some complex things that I've been working on, and it initially works great. It works great. Few rounds of changes works great, and then some hallucinations come in, and now everything's broken. And now I'm more frustrated than I was before I started, because I got so close to it, but then I'm so far away from it now. I've got to start back again and go line by line and basically write it myself. So there's been times like that, and I totally get that experience. It's still required at the moment. David, last thought.
Just as an aside, while we might expect these tools to do really well around coding and technological thinking, I use it ChatGPT almost every week, and I'll put in the scriptural reading, the weekly scriptural reading in Hebrew. I'll put it in and ask for something, and it delivers it to me, and it's kind of amazing. The breadth, not just the depth, but the breadth that these tools have, and how what unique information they can feed back to us.
Yeah, 100%.
Well, I think being able to manipulate it too, you're talking to something and you go, give me this, but then change it into this format, or change, like I was talking about, I think maybe last week about, give me this. I wanted to have a, no meat, no wheat, no dairy. I want a diet. I want something I can cook on Sunday for 3 hours. Give me a lunch plan that I can cook in 3 hours and put into boxes that will stay all week, and, put in little things and stay all week, all the week. And it just gave me 5 things that were great. And I said, give me the recipes. Gave me the recipes. Give me the shopping list that I need for this thing, and it gave it to me. I mean, to the gram. And it's just, and then, oh, by the way, rearrange that so that I can set it up as a checklist inside of notes. Boom, and everything's 15 seconds apart. It's crazy.
Yeah. Well, and now with the app,
send this to shipped, and you don't have to shop for
that's
it.
right. Yeah, order this. Yeah. And now with the app as well, with the voice, and being able to talk to it. So do all of that by talking. And the thing that I played with recently was accents. So I was like, hey, do all of that, but in a French accent. Well, it started saying it in French. I said, not French, but English, but with a French accent. And away it went. It's mind blowing.
Yeah.
All right. You're asking good questions, everyone. Well done. They're taking us a bit of time. What's next, Guy?
Tony Mobley asks, has anyone done the Apple updates on all the Apple devices?
David?
I'm embarrassed to say that I have.
Don't need to be embarrassed.
So, but now I can't do anything because I'm trying to show
this.
There's
been an extensive beta testing program.
Right. So, I mean, yep. So this is the new, what do you call it, feature where you can see your phone. So I've got my phone here, which is locked, and I'm able to bring it up. This is actually pretty cool. I'm enjoying this. The navigation around it is nice. I will say the one problem that I am finding is that I'm now getting notifications that are popping up in my notification bar over here.
Oh.
I'm not realizing that they're notifications from my phone. And so when I click on them, it's opening this up, which I don't necessarily want. But having said that, pretty much all of the tools that I use regularly are working fine with this, with Sequoia and with the iOS update. So, so far so good. I'm enjoying it.
Yeah, I'm kind of, I normally do the phone straight away the day of, so that's happened already. And I normally wait for everything else. However, there's a couple of those features with Vision Pro. I want the Mac display to be the wide view, and so I need to update the Mac OS and then the Vision Pro. So there's a couple. I often watch the announcements and they say, and here's all the 10 amazing features, and I install it and I open my phone and I'm like, what were those amazing features again? There's like one or two that I actually will end up using, but yeah. But it is Apple Update Day. It does seem amazing to me that they push them all out on the same day. I guess all the teams are just sitting waiting by to see if anything fails. the beta testing does go on for quite some time now, so I think they tend to know what is going to work and what's not.
I still won't update my Mac for until next February or March. Like my main Mac. My other ones I'll put one in and play with it, and then I'll probably my presentation Mac will get added because I'm not sure of anything. I think that Keynote will be updated because normally Keynote gets updated shortly after the OS gets updated, and it usually says you can only use one thing about Keynote is funny. Apple always puts features into Keynote that you can only use in the new operating system. It's a pattern now. And
Right.
so you'll get Keynote and it'll say, but you need to update. And then so that my presentation machine gets updated. The problem is if I want to use those presentations anywhere else, I can't. This is the secret.
Yeah.
This is the the hook that they got you. But Motion, Final Cut, and Keynote will most likely, in Pages and whatever numbers, will be probably updated between now and November 15th is my guess. And
How else can they pull everyone forward?
Right.
That's
It's
right.
kind of amazing. The crazy thing with Apple is that Android is kind of a minefield of fragmentation, where it's very hard to develop for Android because of that. So it really doesn't serve anyone because there's no majority. Just like these random, this string of things that are like the last 8 OSs are almost evenly divide what they have. So it's very hard to build the best apps. Apple will have within a month, oftentimes on the phone, will be at like 70, 80%. Will be on the new operating system. It's incredible. And that makes it so much easier as a developer to use the new tools because you don't have to be backwards compatible.
That's enough religion talk. That's what we were talking about before. Next question.
Next one's in from Robert Shoji in Los Angeles, California. And he asks, is it true that it's no longer reliable to stream directly from an ATEM Mini?
Alex?
I would say that it's no longer optimal, and it never has been optimal to stream from it. I don't think it's not reliable. It will stream to it, but I do think that the way it streams out, I think is, it is a lot more people have problems with their stream than I'm used to having but I only use dedicated hardware encoders. So like, what I can't remember so Michael Krasny's show, I use Mimo Live, and that's worked really well, but it has its own little things that have happened here and there. But when I'm doing jobs, I'm generally using some version of a hardware encoder. Like that's what it does. Like it's an elemental link. It's a full-sized elemental. It's a live view. It's it's a piece of hardware. That's all it does is stream, And so my version is probably, I think it's convenient to stream from it, but we had a couple small shows that I wasn't running, but I've had other people work on small shows where they run the ATEM for a long period of time and it overheats and drops out. So it's good for little shows. It's good for things that I would not professionally use the ATEM as a streaming device.
John?
Yeah, we've seen color differences on the output. That definitely is a cause for concern because you can't trust what you're seeing on your HDMI output or SDI output. It seems to be doing something there. It only does VBR. It's not doing constant bit rate. That's also a problem. And I've had this happen to me, and Alexander Knight had this happen to him. Something about sending that video feed to Restream, it just starts to reject it, and it fills up the cache, and then nobody's watching your show. I've seen it a couple times happen to me at 2 different churches, and then it happened on Sunday for Alex's show, Alexander's show, and it's something odd. I have not gotten any sort of feedback directly from Restream. I ended up moving it into Resi. It's just a much more stable platform and a dedicated encoder, and I've been happy with that. It's if you're doing a show that doesn't necessarily matter and it's not into the world, if something doesn't look exactly right and you're just trying to get some content out there, it's definitely a viable solution. It's a good possible backup, but I would not trust it for my day-to-day and everything I do in the office.
Yeah, so it's similar to the web presenters. I use the web presenters for live streaming, and the reason that I find it just a little bit different than the ATEM is because of the really cool control view that you get from the web presenter. You can see a whole lot of data. You can see the cache. You can see the cache immediately, as soon as something's not quite right, that cache starts going up, and you'll start to see drop frames, and like it's a good alert. And so I've liked that. And yes, the VBR is a thing, but I have found that if I push the encode settings to 12 or 14 meg, then it's going to come back to about 8 meg or so, in the way that it's doing the variable. And also it does crush the blacks. And so I have seen that on the web presenters as well. So yeah, there's a few challenges there. So, but it's having dedicated devices, and that's the difference. The web presenter it's only streaming. That's all it's doing. It's not switching as well. It's not doing
Osprey
all those
Talons
extra
for all. Just everybody Osprey Talons.
There you go. Yeah.
As long as you're using DHCP, it loves to lose its gateway on a static assign. So that's something I've learned the hard way.
There you go.
And don't forget that you can use RTMPB. I mean, if you're going to YouTube, you can have a secondary encoder. So if that first one, if the ATEM does hiccup, then you can just fail over to B. So don't forget that you could even use a software encoder. You could use OBS. So at least you have an escape route. So be thinking about that.
Next question.
Next one in from Vic Hernandez in Springfield, Missouri. And he asks, are there any paths into extra hours besides the Discord link?
I think it's I thought it was in the mail. If it's not, we'll check. But I thought it was in our morning mail that goes out. It might be somewhere in the bottom. But we'll try to bring it up there. So we'll look
maybe
at it.
Not the Makana link, perhaps. Maybe that's
Yeah,
we'll look at that.
Yeah, we'll take a look at that. We're still getting started. We only do this once a week. It's just downright relaxed compared to the
so slow.
office. By the time if we did this with office hours, this would have been like our 90th episode.
That's true.
The email does have it, and it does link to this Makana.
Okay, so email. It's in the email.
Yeah. Next question.
Peter Belbin, Houston, Texas, asked, during the second presidential candidate debate, CNN's YouTube stream was not live for a period of time. Any insight as to what happened and how they got it functional again? Secondary ingress and separate WAN, or was it upstream of the encoders?
Alex?
Hard to say. I have no insight into whether it is. What I found is that oftentimes, and I don't have any idea what CNN did, but oftentimes broadcasters, they actually don't know the encoding process very well. Like, it's kind of like, oh, we've got something here that we can turn on. It's not like they have elementals there. It's kind of it's almost a hobby, in a lot of broadcasters, because they just look at their main market is the broadcast. So they're paying a lot of attention to it. And we've seen relatively often that they don't spend a lot of time no matter how many people are going to end up watching it. But my guess is there's probably some kind of some kind of bandwidth thing. They might have been using the house connection, which didn't work out. If we were hired to do this, we would be, again, for a presidential debate of this caliber, we probably would be using, again, the switch and a satellite. And, like if I was brought in to do it, it'd be expensive. And CNN probably did not do those things, but maybe they did. The easiest way to do this would have been to send it from the location to the switch. Over the switch to Encompass is probably where, and then you'd have them do it there, or DCI in Washington D.C., and then you'd have it there. Chances of it going down are pretty low at that point, but it's hard to tell what happened there unless you're there. It's probably something obscure, but it's very. I hesitate to do this because I know people at CNN. It's inexcusable to have a broadcast at this size start late. That just means that people did not manage the logistics of that. That it's a big, it's a lot of people. And you're going to stream to it. And, it's one thing to have your own little stream start a little late. But we have hundreds of people starting in office hours, hundreds of people watching office hours every day. And we start to the second. And so I think that it's I've worked on shows that are very similar to this one, And I can say that it's just a function of having a team there that is only focused on that. And my guess is that whatever happened wrong, there was not a team of 2 or 3 people whose only job was to make sure that the live stream to YouTube went well. It was something extra. We'll just turn the encoder on, is my guess, but I have no idea. But whatever it is, that shouldn't have that's not one of those things that's okay to have happen these days. There's someone, just wasn't paying attention, wasn't putting the logistics of, it should have started for this 2 or 3 weeks before.
Next question.
Whew, that was intense. Okay, Roscoe Jones, Madison, Indiana. How do you use the best of show list from IBC, NAB, CS, ? And he's got a link to a TV technology news article for the best of show winners at IBC 2024.
Anyone, Alex, did you have a little look at that?
That's the first time I saw it. Like, I don't really, I don't know. I don't pay a lot of attention to best of shows. But I probably should. I mean, I looked at some of these. I was like, oh, maybe we should check that out. So a lot of these I always feel like are very political. Like everyone, there's people jockeying for it and trying to do the thing. And so I just never take them that seriously.
David?
It's a little concerning to me that nominees paid an entry fee to enter into this.
My point.
That's a little concerning. Yeah.
My point exactly. But in fairness, everyone who thought they had something worth looking at probably paid an entry fee to do it. So it's a good way to make money. By the best of show is a great way for the conference to make money. But I'm not clear that it's the most accurate of looking at everything that was at the conferences. To your point.
Alex, do you know about the IMAX Stream Smart on air?
Yeah, that is they bought IMAX bought a company that basically and it's late. I haven't had a lot of sleep. I can't remember the name of the company. I'm going to be in big trouble tomorrow. So anyway, but they bought a company that basically very carefully analyzes for optimization, for streams, and really looks deeply into the streams for optimization. And so that's
Vision Science.
No, it's
No, it's another.
yeah.
Anyway, doesn't matter. They're under the IMAX umbrella now.
Yeah, it's SimWave. There we go.
Okay.
So SimWave is the company that they bought for $18.5 million a couple years ago. And they but what SimWave does is they do analyzation to have you, because a lot of it has to do with, when you think that someone just threw something into compressor or media encoder, but what happens when you see something that goes out to, like on Apple TV or Disney, is that encode takes, now it maybe crossed a bunch of machines, but it takes the equivalent of 3 or 4 days to encode. Like it, for what you see on Apple or Disney Plus, it's 3 or 4 days of computing that it takes to do that. And then they analyze the whole thing. They look at everything and what are the changes and how it works. And, and how does that, and you're not just analyzing the top tier, you're analyzing, there's usually anywhere from 6 to 9 steps in the HLS ladder that are being generated. And you're looking at all of them. I think that I do believe that Netflix only pays attention to the top one. It seems like it's like you get the top one if you have a wired connection to your Apple TV, and then otherwise things fall off really fast. And so, not ask me how I know. So the like Gray Man. I remember watching Gray Man, and there's this bar scene near the beginning. On Wi-Fi, it was unwatchable. Like it was just piles of blocks for me. And as soon as I plugged the Ethernet, and I was getting good and a Wi-Fi connection right next to it. As soon as I put an Ethernet in, it was like, oh, it's perfectly good. It was a much better movie when you have Ethernet. But that's what SimWave does. And I'm sure I don't know for sure, but it's not something I deal with specifically, but I'm sure that tool is based around the SimWave purchase.
Yeah. David?
Nope. Just they paid. That was my. That was
still bothered. He's still bothered.
They paid.
That's all.
Next question's related, Guy.
Next one is from Carlos McLean in the US, and he says, any early reports from IBC about prevalent themes / buzzwords? I've been seeing a lot of NMOS capabilities.
Alex?
I think we need to do a second hour on NMOS so that I know what that is. So this is Network Media Open Specifications, an industry standard for advanced media workflows. Yeah, I don't know. I'm trying to think of anything I saw, and I have to admit, IBC happened when I was in production, which means there's like a huge blank space. I don't even check my email, so I have to go back and recover.
Guy, did you pick up any sort of major announcements? I think that the thing that was interesting to us is the Elgato buttons, the rack mount.
Yeah, I've been playing with that as well, and that's one of these buzzwords here. That NMOS is one of the 2110 routing capabilities that's coming with this new buttons capable, and it is a subscription based app. So it's not like they're letting the broadcasters do this stuff for free, because there's a lot more functionality than you would think with this I think it's an NFC chip. So you walk up and let's say, for instance, you have a producer that's able to route, their cameras in front of them, what they want to see on for like a director's type view. But then there's an audio engineer and he gets over comms that something else is up. He could just use his NFC chip and boom, touch it right in front, and the whole panel can unlock and change. And now he could scroll to fix an audio problem, even though he may not be at his desk. So that's one of the cool things about this technology, is it starts to come into play, and it's available. I downloaded the free version, and it's a trial version that you can use with your 32 button or whatever stream. Okay. I don't know actually if it works with all Stream Decks. In fact, it didn't work with my Stream Deck Plus. It works with a 32. Okay. So, and it still is. It's definitely beta.
Well, it does. It does sound interesting too that they were saying that new models will be coming out as well. So I imagine that there might be some other non-rack mounted versions as well. Maybe some desktop versions and things, that might be along this line. But it's an interesting move. So I like that it's self-contained and PoE.
And they're already shipping. That's the amazing thing, is day of show, you could order them and they ship that day. So some people in the community have already gotten their units, and I'm excited. But $899 it's a little much unless you have an actual use for it. I mean, in a truck, I understand, but the cool thing is on the front, you can just USB-C and have one to put in your hand or on your desk. So that's a cool feature, is that depending on what kind of buttons that you actually need for a daily event, you're not having to reach over to that rack to touch something if you're seated.
Yeah. David?
Do you know anything, Guy, about the build quality? Because I'm all about my Stream Decks. I love my Stream Decks, but they're hunks of plastic with little plastic buttons on them. I mean, you get what you pay for, I think, with the Stream Deck. Is this significantly higher build quality for that $899?
It doesn't seem like it. I haven't got my hands on, but I've watched a couple of the videos, and it is an aluminum enclosure, but the buttons, the feel of them is the same. Some people are talking about the aspect ratio being 16:9, so that you can put like video on those buttons that is 16:9. So that would tell me that it is a different button, but Tucker said that it feels the same. He was saying it's the exact same button, but it can't be if it's 16:9. I mean, because these ones on this little guy are more of a rectangle than a or square than a rectangle.
Three, right. And just to be clear, I've never had the buttons fail for me, but again, I paid what, $200 for the 32 key. We're talking about 900. That's quite a premium for this device.
Yeah. Definitely. Yeah. But if you're in that kind of environment where space is at a premium and things, bouncing around as you're driving from place to place, it could be worth it.
All right. We can do one last question there.
Last one in from Taylor Sunderhouse in Cincinnati, Ohio. And he says, Alex, do you use ATEM hardware encoders? And that's ATEM with an E, ATEME.
ATEM.
ATEM.
Yeah, it's very complicated when we have ATEMs and then ATEM. But the ATEMs, it's a French company, and we've used a couple different things. So I've used the Titans, and then in shows that I work on, we use a lot of CM5000s. And CM5000s are really kind of truck encoders that can deliver a variety of different formats into a network. They're not really designed to stream to the outside world. They're designed to stream to each other, to transport video. And so those are the ones that we've used there. The Titans really are on the forefront of a lot of the vision and Atmos encoding. So, Elemental didn't move quite as fast as they probably needed to. And so they still have those features, but ATEM has really, I think, moved much faster than Elemental in solving a lot of vision and Atmos issues and routing. There's a lot of really hard things that they can do inside of the Titans, but the Titans are, $25,000 each. So they're not, or no, they might be more. They might be 50,000 each. They're expensive. I was thinking that the Titans were for 25,000 each, but I'm not sure because I think that we were doing this thing where we had to delay audio and for the embed and the embeds, and we were using a linear acoustics 5291. That was $25,000 a unit. And then the Titans are, I think might be 50,000 a unit or something like that. So these are really powerful appliances that do encoding. And they were the first ones to be able to do Atmos and Vision in the encoder, as opposed to with Elementals, we had to kind of deliver a lot more to it. So we were able to, with the Elementals, we had to kind of, with the Elemental appliances, we had to kind of pre-bake a lot of that and then send it to the appliances, whereas the Titans were a little further along. But they're quirky. There's like, if you can't do anything, this gets back to what we talked about in the cloud. You cannot do anything with a Titan that you haven't done before quite a few times and expect it to work. so like you just got to make sure that they're pushing hard and they're moving fast. But a lot of times we would do things like we changed the frame rate one time to from 60 to 24 or whatever, and it just audio wouldn't embed anymore because they hadn't thought of that. And so even though it's in there, the Dropbox, just that it didn't go through like Apple level, like we're going to check every possible solution that you could possibly go through. It didn't feel like that happened. So anyway, so I think that those are the things with the Titans, you have to be kind of careful of really making sure that whatever your pipeline is going to be the pipeline you're going to use, and don't start changing things unless you've tested them heavily.
I mean, what do you expect for $50,000? It's cheap.
So just a little more expensive than the $179 Zowie box, right? Just a little.
Yeah,
more
I mean,
expensive.
just a little. I mean, the main thing is that when you're buying it, at the time I was using it, it's the only game in town. Like they were the only ones that built that hardware that would do that thing. And you're not talking about doing one encode. Like a lot of times we're thinking about contribution to if we're thinking about, we're going to contribute one stream to YouTube and then it's going to do whatever it's going to do. These are encoders that are building a stereo mix, a Atmos mix. They're doing, vision. They're doing also 9 stairs. So they're delivering a, potentially a 4K and a 1080p and a 720p and a 540p and so they're doing all of these streams out of one, and you have to have control over all of those, and so it's a and then you have to have an interface for it. Then you have to have all the, and it's an enormous amount of power to do all the entire ladder. I mean, like when you look at these little encoders, you're like, oh, it's cute. I mean, they're doing one, like that's, but when you're building the whole ladder yourself, because you're going to deliver it to an Akamai, when you deliver to Akamai, you're not delivering, Akamai's not doing anything for you. It's just going, hey, I have a CDN that will work. Whatever you put in it, it's going to work. And it's going to get to everywhere it needs to go, but you have to deliver the entire ladder for the HLS stream. And that's what these encoders do.
Fair enough. So it is worth the money.
I had two 600, I had 600s and 700s, and my 600s I called the Teslas because I could have owned 2 Teslas, and the 700s were I called my Ferraris because I could have owned 2 Ferraris. But when you buy those, you get these are the front panels, by the way. I kept the panels. So when you buy those, you put yourself in a place where you get jobs that you can't get anywhere. You can't, other people can't get because they haven't invested in Elementals or Titans or whatever.
Yeah. All right. We're down to our recommendations. Who's going to go first here? John, what have you got?
I have a bass player who does YouTube covers. Her name is Julia Plays Grooves. If phenomenal bass player. She's started as a kid. That's how long she's had her YouTube channel. She looks to be an adult now, and she really kills it. It's really great to see her style, grooves, taking a different take on just the music in general. So pop music that I usually wouldn't listen to, she puts a really nice groove to it, and it's really enjoyable to listen to. So I'll post that in the chat.
Nice. Adrian?
If it'll unmute for me. Yeah, what mate David Bergman dropped this week, it's an interesting take on, do you really want 2.8 f fast pro lenses these days with all of the computational stack that you can put behind it, like Topaz and those things to clean things up in post. So it's worth a watch. It's an interesting philosophical thought.
Good one. David?
You all have spoken about one of my favorite artists on the show before, Jacob Collier. And so you'll have to forgive me if this was mentioned already, but he, one of his biggest hits recently was his cover of Bridge Over Troubled Water. And he did a 2-hour Logic breakdown of how he built this song. And it is just unbelievable. It is worth every second to watch his mind sort of become one with the technology that he's using and create this masterpiece. It's just amazing. So I'll drop a link to that for you.
Good one. We didn't plug before, David, the Zoom test kitchen. Still happening 3 p.m. Eastern on Fridays.
Still happening, and we get all the big news right after office hours does. So apparently this Thursday, Andy's coming to you guys in the morning, and then we get him Friday afternoon. So definitely stop by. We've had some fantastic conversations recently. Really, really good stuff.
Yeah, and you
I
really
think it's
go
perfect
line
because
by
people
line.
get to watch and then hang out with you guys. So they have a whole
And
bunch
then
of ideas.
play with it. Yep,
Yes.
absolutely.
But there is line by line on the change logs and things like that. That is really cool with the test kitchen and sort of testing out some of that stuff. So that's great.
Yeah.
Really cool. Guy?
Yeah, and thanks for carrying the torch on that, David. Really appreciate you stepping up and playing in that field. That's awesome. For me, I was actually talking with a DP about one of the concert films that I had recommended previously, and he's like, "Have you seen Stop Making Sense?" And then it got me going down the rabbit hole looking at that one. And then I was telling another friend as I went out to dinner the other night, and he said, "Hey, you know that's coming up in IMAX, one night only, around the globe. So the greatest concert film of all time, Stop Making Sense, is The Talking Heads, 1983 at the Pantages Theater in Hollywood. You can check the link that I'll put in the chat for Stop Making Sense. It's coming to a theater near you on one night only, October 2nd. Stop Making Sense, Talking Heads.
Good one. Alex?
And there was a live interview with them last year when they released it at the Toronto Film Festival. So it's pretty interesting. So yeah, I'm glad that they're re-releasing it because I was not able to go see that one. so anyway, see the movie there on that night. So that's great. And also, by the way, I just wanted to, with what David Paskin said, there's also a Owl City, Fireflies. I don't know if you remember the song. By Owl City, they break that all down into tracks too. I love these. I just love these track breakdowns. It's really fun of that song. He kind of talks about some of the stuff's kind of an accident, and he said, but it sounded good, so I left it in. It's like one of those things. It's really great. It's very artistic. My recommendation is the Buddhist Band, and it just makes me happy listening to it. It's kind of jazzy. It feels very. I don't know exactly what they fit into. But it was one of those things. I started listening to, Kevin and I were driving back from Vegas, and we were listening to, we started with Cambodian surf rock because that's what we both work to sometimes. And so it started off with Dengue Fever, but then it just kind of, then you just allow it to just keep going. Right. And this song came up called Scorpion by the Buddhist Band, and they are so good. I feel like, my kids are both in the band, at school, and my son is only in 2 bands. My daughter's in 7. But they're in the school bands and the jazz bands, and I think it's hard to have like I did trumpet when I was in school, and I felt like listening to Buddhist band, I would have kept playing. Like I just felt it was very like I felt like in a very classical and I just didn't feel cool. And you listen to the Buddhist band Scorpion, and it's like African fun of horns and just incredible. It just and anytime I just want to feel good while I'm working or something like that, I just turn that song on. It's so good. And I've been listening to the rest of their songs are really good too. So anyway, check that out.
That's great.
It's Budo. It's not Buddha. It's like
Okay.
Budo.
Okay, good.
I've been Googling Buddhist.
Yeah,
band.
Buddhist.
Yeah, I realized that. I was like,
I
it doesn't
found
sound right.
Definitely
Yeah,
not getting the
exactly.
right thing.
Yeah.
So my recommendation actually is America's Got Talent, and I normally only watch it on YouTube basically, and you just see the protein. You just see the clips of the people actually performing. But this season we've been watching as a family and have really quite enjoyed it. The production, the on-stage production at the Pasadena convention center or whatever, but it's the convention center in Pasadena. I actually did a little show in there, and so it was familiar. But they've gone off the charts with their on stage production. Lead, sort of lead floor, lead walls behind, lead stairs. The lead stairs are really impressive off the front of the stage because they just kind of disappear in the way that it's kind of like almost mapped. And so you can't even see it. So anyway, it's worth looking at. Sometimes it's overpowering the acts. Like there's too much lighting, there's too much movement on the screens behind for where it's pulling focus. But anyway, I mean they're flexing and it's impressive, and the uh, um, the choreography is the term I was wanting to use with a Steadicam operator is really impressive too. In lots of the acts, Steadicam operator they're singing directly to or they're performing to, and then they're walking through the stage and through set pieces and things. Really nicely done with their Steadicam operator. So anyway, it's quite impressive. They've got plenty of money to spend, obviously, because they are spending.
You only have one stage. You don't have to go very far. It's not very hard to produce the video. So all there is to do is work on the stage, and they just keep turning that knob up. You're right. You're right. I mean, as a technical person, as a viewer, I feel like it takes a little bit away from the artist. Like I feel like what respects the artist is almost a bare bone stage, like a black box.
Agreed.
Like here's the artist. This is what they're going to do. And something should be very, very calm and nothing. So as a person who loves artists, I feel like they should do less. As a person who loves tech, so much fun to watch. Yeah.
It's exactly how I feel. It's the original, the first auditions for each of them is bare bones, and often they're the best too, right? Where you really see what they're
authentic.
About. Yeah. Anyway, it's worth checking it out. I think the final is this week. So
did you see the janitor? Was the janitor in this season?
Yeah.
Did he get very far?
So he's in the final. He's in the final.
So good. Like, if you just do America's Got Talent janitor, it's so, I don't know, inspiring. This guy,
He's got a great voice.
He's got a great
voice, and it was just so amazing that he's never sung in front of anybody, I think, until he got there, and he just knocked it out of the park. It's really cool.
He did Eye of the Tiger was his last one with the semifinal.
Gotta go check it out.
Yeah, it was great. Yeah. So the Tlaloc traversal is 13,000 miles, 21,000 kilometers, 103 million bananas for scale. There you go. So we've got a few people that are sitting in after hours, and so a few of us are going to jump over there and have a little chat. Anyone that wants to join there, they can, and we'll catch you next week, 6 o'clock on Monday Pacific, and every day in between. 7 p.m. Pacific, you can be asking your questions. Alex? Oh.
No, I was whispering.
Oh.
It's what we do.
It's what we do. You were whispering so low that it wasn't
Yeah.
cutting through.
Yeah,
I was like, what's happening here?
I was trying to be funny, but I wasn't very good at it.
I want to thank Laura for looking after the questions, and Taylor, who's making it all happen. It's always hard to as a technician to have people watching you, and you've had 30 or so people watching your work tonight, Taylor, and so well done. It's nice to have that. And Jeff's been helping out as well. 1F Jeff. So thanks everyone, and bye for now.